So, Jo, we'll start with you. Firstly, could you tell us a bit about ESI's business today and how you're monetizing your inventory? And then afterwards, maybe we can talk about the identity solution, but we can talk about your core business model today.
Yeah, sure. So we have The Independent, which is a global quality news organization, and we publish in multiple languages and cultures. It's a really big news website now, and we reach over 100 million uniques a month. And then we also run the Evening Standard, which is still a print newspaper for London and also a digital news site. So we are moving to a digital first publishing model on the Evening Standard, and they're very different revenue models. So historically, we have relied on advertising revenue for both. But the last few years, we've diversified those revenue streams, and now advertising accounts, particularly on the Independent, for just 60% of our advertising revenue. And the other 40% come from digital services and reader revenues. So we are diversifying into subscriptions and contributions, and also content sales in the form of licensing and syndication. But advertising revenues will account for the majority of our revenue coming in and is our primary revenue stream. But it's interesting now that we are coexisting quite happily with a reader revenue model, and we coexist quite happily because we look at audience segmentation as the driver for that.
And so, as a publisher, you've been bombarded, I'm sure, with a vast array of solutions, all preparing you for this post-cookie world. I mean, which of those horses have you chosen to back, and why?
We have gone down the route of spreading the opportunity, if you like, or spreading the risk. So we don't want to back just one of those horses, because I've put our trading revenue at considerable risk. So we are looking at quite a few initiatives. We are concentrating on the identity management side. So we are very interested in PubMatic and the Identity Hub and other solutions. We are also looking at the browser-based solutions. So we're keeping an eye on Google Flock and the Turtle Dove initiatives that are coming out from that side, because we are quite reliant on the Google ad tech stack, which hopefully in the next few years we can move away from that reliance and dependency a little bit. And then we're also looking at the publisher-centric solution, so the data bunker solution. So we're talking to InfoSum and Experian. We're working quite closely with Permutive, who's our DMP, and the audience connector initiatives that they've got as well. And then, of course, we're members of Ozone. So that sort of trusted cross-publisher structure we're also very supportive of. So we're trying to keep a wide-based approach, because it's a real urban myth that there's going to be one solution out there that's going to conquer everything. And we just want to make sure that we are not restricting our trading in any way.
Yeah. Emma, you're obviously positioned between the ID solutions and your clients. Have you been adapting your business to make room for all the new solutions? Yeah. How does an SSP go about accommodating all these different options?
Well, I can talk about how we're doing it. I think that, as we move towards a cookieless future, we're encouraging advertisers and publishers to explore the audience addressability landscape and to begin experimenting with identity and data solutions in order to test the efficacy of each strategy and see what yields higher percentages of addressable audiences. And I think, what Jo has just said there about keeping our options open and not putting all of our eggs in one basket, or backing a single horse. I'm not sure how many how many I can get into that, but I just think that the strategy that Jo's doing, which with the testing, is really important. And we've worked really hard to provide both publishers and buyers with some tools that enable them to do that level of testing. I think Jo already referenced PubMatic's Identity Hub. And what this does is it enables publishers to activate, manage, and curate ID solutions that drive the scale that's needed for buyers to increase addressability and reach their desired target audiences through their ID of choice. It's built on pre-bid. It curates over a dozen leading ID solutions for publishers that include both probabilistic and deterministic IDs. And what we've seen is that publishers that have Identity Hub activated can begin to develop and experiment with their identity strategy, much like Jo referenced before, by implementing A/B tests to identify ID efficacy. And then what we've also seen is that when publishers leverage Identity Hub to manage and curate their ID strategy, this then delivers an improved and renewed level of audience addressability for buyers to activate. We've also got our Audience Encore, which is an audience data platform designed to improve the way that marketers and data owners transact audience data by giving more control to the data owner rather, and better ROI for the advertiser. And that means buyers can create fully custom curated data segments in private marketplaces to align with brand clients' target audiences across a multitude of first-party audience data readily available through our premium and exclusive partnerships with the likes of Hcode, Captify, Audigent, Lotame, and many more. And of course, there's also contextual targeting, because that hasn't gone away. And we pass IAB contextual categories and page language in the bid request. So whilst personalization is growing in sophistication, it's always really been about reaching the right person with the right message and the right time, and that hasn't changed. And that isn't just a marketing catchphrase either. This is a proven hypothesis that delivers high quality and relevant ad experiences that drives improved results. And as simple as that sounds, today, many of the current pieces to that puzzle are managed and consolidated in independent silos, think data, inventory, and media. So with so many advanced technologies being developed, the future for personalization will look much simpler by leveraging the largely untapped potential of data directly powering inventory and media. So, we've put a lot of effort into making sure that we have developed solutions and support for both our publishers and our audience partners. And what we're really doing is encouraging people, as Jo said, to start to do some testing now, because there's a window of opportunity to do that.
Jo, to some extent, you get people like me hyping up this issue. Everybody's talking about 2022, and it's sort of presented as if it's something new. But I suppose, to some extent, we've seen a glimpse of what the future may look like because cookies have been blocked in Safari for a while now. I'm curious about how you're getting on with your Safari traffic. How are you monetizing it? And how does it perform in comparison to the audiences, the traffic that you get through other browsers like Chrome today?
Well, it's an interesting question, because our readers are very pro Safari, very pro Apple. So at least 40-50% of our audience is already on Safari devices or Firefox. So we use Permutive as our data management platform, and that gives us more targetable inventory, and it gives us better yields because we can already target those audiences which are blind to advertisers, if you like. So we've been working in that landscape for quite some time. We see really good yields on those markets. And I think we've had to adapt quicker than others, maybe because of the profile of our audience. So we've sort of learned from that, and we're not as phased, I think, by the January 2022 date that's looming up against us all. So we've had a little bit of experience in that, and we haven't found it a scary experience. So we've had a very positive experience from that. So I don't think it's going to be as much of an issue as perhaps it could have been if we hadn't have had that experience already.
Emma, I'm always curious to talk to vendors when they've got access to lots of data across what's happening, and they sort of have that bird's eye view. Are you seeing a preference for particular types of solutions in Identity Hub, or are most publishers taking a hybrid approach similar to Jo, where they're experimenting with every different
I would say that mostly we're seeing publishers now take the hybrid approach, because we are in a test and learn phase, and we are actively encouraging that, as I said previously. And I think it's really important, because bringing addressability into the programmatic environment creates a multiplier effect on the number of IDs in the ecosystem, which is great. But on the other hand, if this is unchecked or mismanaged, this results in a scenario where the value of these IDs begins to diminish. And today, that's a very real challenge for many advertisers and publishers. And there is a need for automated tools that are capable of combining mountains of disparate IDs and data sources, and then transforming that information into opportunities for advertisers to address unique audiences. So, because of all of that complexity, we are really, really actively encouraging people to do a test and learn, and sort of have a bit of a hybrid approach to begin with.
Yeah. It wouldn't be an ad tech conversation about identity if we didn't get onto Google at some point. Jo, I'm curious about how you viewed Google's most recent announcement, the one about not supporting alternate identifiers within their products. Yeah, what was your take on that as a publisher?
I don't think we were surprised. I think it was an inevitable announcement. But what it does raise is quite a few questions our side. So the first is, as I sort of mentioned before, it gives us the opportunity potentially not to be so reliant on Google tech stack, which is a good thing. And I think it gives independent tech providers more of a chance. And hopefully we'll see a diversification in that use and a less of a reliance all round actually on that stack. It's good that it's promoting privacy first. So one of the main responsibilities of my role is data compliance. And so it's good that it's putting privacy first and also the consumer first on one level. But it also raises questions as to the dominance of Google and the way that they want to operate and how far they'll be able to take that. I think that's going to be challenged pretty soon. That's a negative, I think, from that. Yeah. But I think a better competitive market is only a good thing. And I think longevity of publishers and their data and maximising the use of their data with trusted partners has been given a boost, actually.
Yeah. And Emma, what's your view? Do you think it's going to hurt the identity providers? There's quite a few around now, and it was sort of, I think at the time, some people sort of perceived that this was a heavyweight blow, but I think the mood has changed a little bit, and do you think that this could even represent an opportunity for both independent publishers, independent ad tech, to kind of create a new ecosystem which Google has less influence over?
Yeah, I think that, look, first and foremost, consumer privacy and control are critical components of a healthy and sustainable open internet. Developing first-party connections between a publisher, an advertiser, and a consumer has been a key part of PubMatic's approach to post-cookie addressability and is further validated by Google's latest announcements. We think that this move, to your point, may actually accelerate publishers' response to third-party cookie deprecation, benefiting advertisers who are increasingly seeking to diversify spend away from walled gardens without losing the personalization and campaign ROI that they are used to from a known identity. So yes, I think this presents a significant opportunity for the open internet to coalesce around user experience and consumer choice.
Okay, staying on the theme of consumers, Jo, do you think the industry has done a good enough job of communicating the sort of value exchange when it comes to data to audiences? And how do you approach, how do you sort of try and persuade more of our users to share their first party data with you so that you can use it?
No, I don't think they've done a good enough job. And I think what has happened over the years is that there has been a tussle between the ad revenue side and the data and marketing side potentially. So on one hand, you've got, yes, we need first party data for monetization. That's been done very successfully. But on the other hand, the more data you have on your users, the better you understand them, the more engagement you get from your users. And so that's now becoming more of a cultural transformation within user organizations, in my view. So it's only a positive. So we are now looking at customer experience first. We're looking at customer engagement. We're looking at the relationship we have with our users, and we're looking at the trust that we have with our readers. And we're trying to put that first, which I think hasn't necessarily happened previously. It's all been more about the monetization of those users. So we're upping our game. We're doing a lot in predictive modeling. We're doing a lot on audience segmentation. So as Emma was referencing before, we've got a new model. We're calling it the APV score. We score every single reader going to our site, and we now can predict what their next move is going to be. And we've put them into segments and super, and we integrate that model into all our messaging. So no longer are we giving the same message to everybody who comes to the site. Depending on your APV score is what message you'll see, and whether it's a prompt to register for newsletters, which we're revamping, or to start commenting on the site, because we've got a new community building platform that we're integrating, which is to readers, or it could be driving access to premium content, which has been a really good value exchange historically for our readers. We can now offer those messages to a person knowing that they're at the right stage to receive them. And that's a real game changer for us. So we're upping our game in terms of the value exchanges that we're offering to readers, but we're making sure that we're offering them the right one at the right time. And I think it's just accelerated that first party data acquisition, but also the thinking around value for a reader, and probably could have happened a few years earlier, but this third party cookie sort of change is really accelerating that for us as a news organisation, which is only a good thing.
And Emma, one of the things that people have been sort of predicting, is that we could see more publisher consortiums springing up in response to this, as the incentives to work together, particularly on data sharing, become more attractive. Now, we've seen quite a few of these fail over the years. Often the ones that sound like sexually transmitted diseases, Pangea, a few others, they've seriously struggled. But we've seen new contenders like Ozone, evolving and sort of adapting, and not only that, but growing successfully. Do you think that this shift towards new forms of identity could result in seeing even more publisher alliances springing up and them being more sustainable than they've been in the past?
Yeah, look, I think the digital walled gardens have thrived on, the large amounts of audience data that they've had integrated into a single view, easy to use planning, reporting and optimization tool for marketers. And this is great for media buyers who want to reach addressable audiences at scale with personalized advertising without a great deal of effort. Now, outside of the walled gardens, publishers cannot compete on their own. Media buyers are simply not in a position to navigate hundreds of individual publishers and platforms. However, when premium publishers collaborate, they create something that is extremely valuable and not available within the walled gardens, which is cross-publisher data. Now, responsibly sourced, up-to-date cross-publisher data housed in a trusted, accessible ecosystem creates a platform from which publishers can compete with the scale and convenience of the walled gardens. And today, this is a key way that media buyers can identify synergies and create premium media buys at significant scale and shift budget away from the walled gardens. We've seen solutions such as NetID in Germany, and Jo already referenced Ozone in the UK, that have proven that trusted cross-publisher data ecosystems work. And this trend is on the rise in regions where there has been a growth in the anti-walled garden movement, for want of a better phrase. So yes, I think there's, we're definitely seeing a rise, and I can definitely see a future here. However, what is unclear is how these publisher login alliances will work across international borders. And while it's not impossible to create publisher alliances that can operate in multiple languages, incorporate multiple country-specific regulations and multiple currencies, it is more challenging compared to single market solutions. So I think that's something that also needs to be addressed next. But yeah, definitely see the rise and see the value.
Yeah. And Jo, you mentioned that you're a member of Ozone. What's your feeling on the publisher alliances? And, firstly, what's your experience of Ozone so far? I'm sure the Ozone people won't like me asking that. But yeah, have you finally reached a place where we might see publishers working in a more sustainable way, as we have in the TV industry, where longevity seems to be something that they can manage quite well?
No, absolutely. I think we had our teething problems, and particularly if you look at the news publishers and the lack of collaboration when we were all in the printed media space. We have come on a huge amount since those days. And I think it's needed, because you can't have that fragmentation in the market, and not one publisher will have enough scale to be able to take everybody on their own. And I often think of it where, from a reader and content perspective, we publish our content across a whole myriad of platforms because our readers want to read our editorial, how they want to read it, where they want to read it. And it's the same for making your inventory available to traders. You need to make it available to traders and media buyers in the way that they want to buy it, or the way that clients want to buy it. And I don't think you should close off an avenue or a route because you don't want to collaborate with a bunch of your peers. I think it's really vital to the success of this industry, continue to collaborate, but with the thought in our minds not to fragment too much. So yes, by all means, collaborate. The publisher alliances are a really, really positive thing. I think they're working successfully now, but let's not fragment too much in the future and then make it more difficult for media buyers to trade with us.
Yeah. Okay, one final question, and I think this gets to the core of what most publishers are thinking about, if we look ahead, say, let's say in 2 years' time, you know, when we've sort of, the dust has settled after the changes, do you think publishers are going to be significantly better off, worse off, or will it be much the same? Jo, do you want to kick off on that one?
Sure. I think we are going to be better off. I think that we are taking the landscape seriously. We are building for the future. And I think we have such a unique relationship with readers who really associate with our brands and they trust our brands. And we have that direct relationship with readers. We're trying to make their experience better. We're trying to improve their engagement and their attitude towards our brands. And I think that can only be a good thing. And if we just make sure we not exploit that relationship, but perhaps exploit that relationship in the right way, it can only be a positive thing. And, you know, all the publishers that are accelerating their first party data acquisition programs, that's a win-win in my view. You can't lose from doing that, whatever the landscape looks like in the future. The more publishers, the more readers, that you move from an anonymous state to a known state can only be a good thing on a whole variety of levels for your organisation. So I think we will be better off.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the tide is beginning to shift as publishers reclaim control and harness the value of their data sets with independent alternatives to the walled gardens. You know, we're now seeing publishers form alliances at scale, as Jo said, across their collective properties, and other industry consortiums are providing identity alternatives. And most importantly, I think there is more willingness now among publishers, media buyers and tech providers to work more closely together to counter the duopoly. You know, with identity challenges on the horizon and advertisers seeing the growing importance of first-party data, publishers are in a really strong position to leverage their direct relationships with the users to enable better, more personalised ad experiences for their users. So yeah, I think the future's bright.
It's good. It's finally some good news for publishers. We've been waiting quite a few years for that. So yeah, look, I'm feeling optimistic after that, and I'd like to thank you very much. Thank you both very much for joining me. Cheers.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.